us offering academic and systemic insights into the profession. Thank you all for being here. The session will be moderated by none other than Sheeba. Sheeba, over to you, please.
Thank you, Akriti. Thank you very much, Akriti. It's an absolute pleasure to be hosting this panel. If I may ask Abhishek to please pin our guests. We'll just take a moment for because I have an opportunity to welcome everyone to one of the most exciting and future-looking conversations of this conference, Progress of Coaching in India and Future Possibilities. Coaching in India has traveled a remarkable distance from being a corrective intervention to a strategic leadership accelerator. Today, coaching sits at the intersection of culture, capability, consciousness, and the future of work in a Bani world. We have an extraordinary panel, thought leaders who have shaped coaching from boardrooms to ecosystems. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Preeti de Mello, global leadership thinker who integrates fulfillment, systems, and human potential. Dr. Manoj Biswas, architect of India's first virtual hospital and strategist connecting AI, HR, and human transformation. We have with us Ms. Sinjini Sengupta, an actuarial leader turned storyteller. She founded Lighthouse, where she helps leaders and teams bring heart to work with power of storytelling. And we have Mr. Vikram Bector, a visionary group CHRO, renowned for embedding coaching cultures in large Indian conglomerates. To begin with, let's anchor the room with a provocative thought. Coaching in India is no longer a luxury. It's becoming a leadership necessity. And with that, I'll invite Dr. Manoj first and then Sinjini to add her perspective to a question that I think stands and kind of looks at us today, which is in one sentence, where do you believe coaching in India truly stands? Dr. Manoj?
Thank you for such a nice introduction, and good evening, everyone. Well, in a sentence, it's very difficult to describe, but let me put it this way, that coaching in India is looking for a coach. And I'll just talk a little bit about why I say that, because specifically leadership coaching today is going through multidimensional shifts. This is because of changing business environments. Global and local economies are changing, and that's a big shift. Geopolitical changes, and of course, uncertainties in so-called the sunrise industries. And of course, the biggest intruder has been AI. So I think because of all of these factors, I think we are at the cusp of a big change. And most of the people that I talk about, whether it is in coaching as a profession or senior HR leaders or business leaders, I think are at that cusp of saying, what's next?
Thank you. Sinjini?
Very interesting question. I'm thinking how to say that, but I think coaching bridges us. Inwardly, it bridges our head and our heart. And if we translate that into a workplace, I think it bridges the policies with the culture, the people with the leaders, because the workplace is changing. We are all seeing that, knowing that, feeling that in our fabric of everyday life. Workplace is changing. The new generation, if I may put the blame on them, are not being driven by fear. They are not scared of the older people. They're not scared of authority, and they are not enforced by discipline. If they're not interested, they wouldn't come back. And for them to be interested, our leaders need to reinvent themselves. And if the leaders need to reinvent themselves, they only can turn towards coaching, finding their own voice, authenticity, and rediscovering, rescripting their own personality.
I love that language you're using of re-scripting coming from a storyteller herself. I'll move on to Preeti, and I'll ask you a very fundamental question that I think I need clarity on and love your perspective. And I think a lot of people in the audience need it, because this word and this buzz is all around. But everyone defines coaching in as many ways as possible. So what is your lens of what is coaching really?
That's a great question. It's also a very valid question in these times that we live in. I'll give you my definition. I believe coaching is a collaborative, present and future focused partnership. It's designed to unlock potential, not by giving answers under any circumstance. In fact, it is by creating conditions in the coaching container, in the conversation, in the dialogue, so that people can find their own answers. It's undoubtedly goal-oriented, and I like the idea of the goal orientation. And yet at the same time, it's not about external goals, it's about all kinds of goals that might exist. And you alluded to that, Sheeba, as you spoke about it. Coaching speaks to us from where we currently are to where we want to be. And thus, it could be leadership presence, it could be career clarity, it could be personal transformation, or things of the sort. But I'd like to touch upon what it's not. It's not mentoring. It's not about when someone shares their journey for you to follow. Or if in a coaching conversation, somebody says, I completely understand because this happened to me as well. It's not consulting. We are not experts. In fact, the only expert in a coaching conversation is the coachee or the client. We are facilitators of the process, not the experts in the room. It's also not therapy. And I say this because a lot of coaching is now talking about well-being, and I think it most certainly can generate well-being. And yet, we have to sometimes address the past. So we need to find I love Sinjini's expression of bridge. What's the bridge between the head and the heart, which Sinjini said? But what the head and the heart really is, the head is saying, I'm moving forward. The heart is saying, I'm being pulled back. So what's really happening, and how does that bridge work without us getting embedded in the past? Because we need to know that these are very clean, clear verticals of the work we do. The modalities are clear to everybody. We do it through deep listening and powerful questions, and we help build clarity and confidence. I would say important to remember that coaching is not a performance. So it's a key one for me, because if we were to follow the client's agenda, recognize that our job is to follow the process, and we are not performing, because actually, like I said, the expert in the room is the client. They have the answers. Our job is to facilitate or to create conditions where answers can be found by the person looking for them. So I know it's a long, drawn response, but Sheeba, that's the best I could do with all the emotion I feel around it.
Well, a very valuable and enlightening one. So you did bring in a lot of clarity on what it is not, which is also important to know. And what it is going deep inside, figuring out your own self and finding your own solutions, which came up very beautifully. Thank you. And with that, I think it also raises a question as to what attributes in a coach and coachee make the experience transformational. And I'll invite Sinjini to share her perspective here.
I believe first curiosity about yourself, that there is more. Also, I feel that both the coachee and the coach, herself and himself, come in with a fairly open heart in an ideal situation. While we have goals, like Preeti very beautifully explained, but at the same time, when you disrupt, you do not disrupt with a formula. You disrupt and then you let the Lego pieces rebuild into a new shape. So what finally emerges out of it is really transformation. I am more into story coaching and not coaching as executive or leadership coaching, so I can speak from that space. I believe that the stories we grow up with, the stories we have watched, observed, seen, heard, been told by adults, with a generational timestamp that nobody spoke about. Everybody spoke like these are the laws of nature, but they were not. And eventually now, as we live life, we realize that perhaps some of them are dated, some of them are, timed, and we are writing our own stories. We are telling stories to ourselves in our head, and into the mirror we are telling others stories about ourselves. Others are telling stories about us when we are not in the room. And each of these narratives, I believe, are often overshadowed by what I should be. Between a coachee and a coach, I believe it is a space of openness and honesty and authenticity, complete humility, complete, emotional nakedness in some way, so that we can put everything on the table and look at them and see what we want to keep, grow, or leave.
Thank you, Sinjini. I think the key takeaway or the word that really stands out to me in this entire conversation, that if I would want audience to take away, is vulnerability. And in our previous session, we spoke about becoming vulnerable as a coach as well as a coachee. So thank you for that. And we have Vikram here now, and I would like his perspective on what do Indian organizations misunderstand about coaching?
I think, hi everyone. Sorry I got delayed in this whole tech confusion, but quite honestly, I'd like to share a balanced view. There are a few things Indian organizations have got it right. So any organization, whether it's here or not represented here, I think first, now we are beginning to see almost all high potentials receiving coaching. So there are no exceptions, at least in my experience, any organization which is missing out giving coaching or providing that support to high potentials, which is an amazing sign. That was not the case. 10 years ago, people were still debating, should we, shouldn't we? Now they're all in. So we must give it out to them. And I say it because with a fairly broad understanding of many, many organizations in India. So that's the positive. I think the second thing is they realize that, it's a process. Let's give it time. And therefore, we are seeing people being patient with it, organizations being patient with their hypots and their future leaders, and spending those 1, 2, 3 years it takes to mature leaders. And I think what probably we've not got it right yet is, while it's prescribed for hypots, I still don't see too many CEOs themselves signing up for it. It's still for the others, for the hypots, for my, that senior VP who's going to become a president, but not for the president or not for the director yet. I have already arrived. So I think that sometimes, is something which I'm seeing. It's for the others, especially from a CXO vantage. The other thing I would say is, especially we are an impatient set of people in India. So we still expect many parts, and that's a dichotomy I'm sharing. In some places, earlier I said we are patient. Here I'm saying in many cases we want immediate fixes and results. So we want coaching to fix some problems immediately. So I think those are the two things we got it right, and two things I would love to see us get right, which are wrong right now.
Okay, I'll invite other panelists, if you have some strong opinions on this, to share and add value. Please do.
Well, I totally agree with Vikram. I think, I love the perspective that we've got some bit right and we haven't got some bit right. I was with TCS prior to what I'm doing now. And I think we got it right. We had the largest number of internal coaches. We had a coach certification program with 800 odd coaches internally, completely supported the culture. And yet at the same time, we expect to have immediate results. And that's not what coaching is about. So to bear in mind that this is a process, that process takes time. It's about human transformation. And the only way to get there is to start the journey.
Beautiful. Thank you. Manoj, I see you would like to share your thoughts as well.
I think I agree with both, what Preeti and Vikram said. I do feel I started saying, we are at the cusp of a change. So there is definitely a lot of improvement which needs to come in. I do see that, people are embracing change. I think lots of organizations are. While not everybody is the leaders or such organizations who have been doing things right, who have got the method right, who've got some stuff right. TCS is another good example where they've got it right, and hence you see the leadership the future leadership of corporate India emerging out of some of these organizations. So it's not necessarily fueling something or creating a leadership pipeline through coaching and various other interventions for yourself, but also be willing to share it with the others, with others, right? I think that's I see some of the even the not so large organization embracing that. Unfortunately, the business dynamics makes it to where people want to see immediate results. Because what I started with saying that the shifts that we are seeing in business is very the cycle of that shift is becoming smaller and smaller, and hence I think the business leaders also expect that the results need to come sooner. I think somewhere in between lies the positive, the correct answer. So it has to be some changes that we have to make in our profession to define some of these changes, and some things that we have to guide the businesses to change and be ready to share, like some of the other organizations.
Sinjini, would you like to tell a storyteller's perspective on this?
I work with very tangible outcomes because I story coach. So essentially, it is to be able to help the leaders, become brand champions and speak in conferences and hold town halls. So I very often work with very tangible outcomes, which perhaps makes it slightly different from, or significantly different from, some of the other very erudite examples I am hearing and learning from. But yes, it is true that it is an inside out process. True human change is very somatic, as each one of us know, being in this profession. While, the time orientation and the tracking system and overall the outcome based approach definitely rushes things a bit. It takes more time to simmer. And there is always perhaps going to be that clash unless people are, it will take time. I think now the awareness is there, but the ideal situation will take its time. It will always meet somewhere in the middle ground. I agree with each of the panelists who express their opinions, because I see that in my practice exactly, the similar way.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
If I may add to that.
Yes, Preeti, please.
Well, the idea of results needs to be defined, because and I'm going to give you an example of one of my experiences. We put 600 odd leaders into a coaching program in one shot. The organization was looking for a big shift and said, you know what, these are my senior leaders. They all go in for coaching. And I remember the sponsor asking me to say, there couldn't be a downside. Means, look at how much we're investing in them. And we said, well, everything has a downside. So let's talk about that. And the downside really was that people come into a state of clarity. And when people come into a state of clarity, they take decisions that are in their best interest. So about 7-8% of the entire population actually quit that organization. And I was called in to say, sorry, your program is an absolute failure. It hasn't worked. And I said, well, let's look at it this way. You actually have retained 93% of the population. And that means 93% of the population really means to be here and are committed to staying and working and contributing. The 7% who decided to leave have come into their state of purpose, are moving into whatever they're doing best. Would you not rather have that clarity? And to the idea of tangible results that Sinjini mentioned, it's very important for us to be able to define what that means. Because results can mean anything. Sometimes even when you look at high potentials and we put them into coaching, you say, high potential will perform better. But they might not. They actually might completely pivot into a different direction. So coaching is, in a sweet and funny way, a risky business. Because if you are investing in people and you are courageous enough to say they're going to come into a state of awareness, then we've got to deal with that awareness.
Totally agree. And I have myself seen CXOs, CEOs scared to put coaching in place just because they feel if we keep training and growing these people, are we creating a training center where they become so aware and then they leave us. Why do it? And I think we just need to hold the mirror back to them as community. If you don't, you're losing much more.
Yeah.
If I may add one line to this, Preeti, you got us all started. So I have, led workshops in groups of, say, 20, 30 odd new managers, etc., where by the end of a certain deep reflection, people have shot up their hand in the air and said, I just realized, Sinjini, I never meant to be an engineer. And I'm like, no, your boss is in the room, you're still an engineer. So yes, it opens your eyes, and if your eyes are open, then again, it is like, she very beautifully said, the hero in the room is the coachee, not the coach. And the hero decides which way he or she will go.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now we shift gears a little bit. We have discussed what coaching is, what good and bad coaching looks like, where India is. Now let's look at the landscape that's shifting. And Dr. Manoj kind of touched upon it at the beginning with AI coming in. So how has leadership demand for coaching changed in past decade? What are CHROs really asking for today? That's for Dr. Manoj, yeah.
Yeah, so like I talked about earlier, about some of the realities which are changing, and these changes are quite fast in pace, and I think that is what organizations are dealing with. However, there are certain positive patterns that I'm seeing. While Vikram did talk about to say that leadership at the CXO level thinks that they have arrived, and hence that's the section where coaching is not too much. But my experience is that some of the business changes is forcing CEOs to also look at to say, how do I become a better CEO? I feel that there are some sections of CEOs and CXOs who are still looking for a coach, a business coach. While the CXO and N-1 and the top leadership or potential leadership in the organizations were always looked at, but I do think that the organization are also focusing on a little bit more of group coaching, as Sinjini talked about. So they are looking at more than the potential leaders, probably because there is this fear of 97% and this 93% and the 7% that Preeti talked about, or probably it's because to say, if I have an opportunity and I have identified potential leaders, they could be the next leaders, or maybe some others who are probably left out could be there. So that is one big thing that I'm seeing as a change, where people are asking for in smaller groups of but group coaching. The other thing that I'm seeing is how a typical manufacturing industry, which earlier we did not associate too much on focused on coaching, or they would do some level of training, etc., which is aligned to their business. But coaching was something that I did not see, at least in a very big way, in some of these industries like retail or manufacturing. They are now opening up to this, and not the large manufacturing organization, but even smaller and medium scale organizations are open to go that way. So I'm getting CXOs to talk about, hey, can we do this, can we do that? And most of these are focused on, when it is group coaching, I think most of the ask has been focused on culture transformation, how to make their next line of leadership adapt to the cultural changes, some people management, and a lot more on business dynamics and business changes. I think these are the three key parameters that I'm seeing. The other interesting thing that I'm seeing is that I'm also seeing demand and ask from CXOs from organizations which are in tier 2, 3, tier 3 cities. which earlier was something that I did not see as much. But I do see that tier 2, tier 3 cities, people are asking to say that, this is something that has come up as a plan, and how do we implement this? So I think those are few radical changes that I've observed in the last few years.
Thank you for sharing that, Manoj. Also, now we see that India has a boom in coaching certifications, but also a confusion, I would say, of quality. What shift do you see in coaching maturity, ethics, and readiness? And I'll invite Preeti to share her perspective here.
Well, the boom is real, and so is the confusion. India has about 1,500 ICF credentialed coaches, one of the fastest growing markets in the world. But for every credentialed coach, I'd say, there are many more who've been certified by organizations, no accreditation, no standards, no ethical framework. Which does not mean that they don't have it, but they haven't been certified. And here's the uncomfortable truth from my lens, is that one, you cannot create a coach over 2 weekends. Yet that's exactly what's happening. Programs promise 60 hours of training, and people come out knowing the what of coaching, but not the how of coaching. And this matters because coaching is not a methodology. It's a process of transformation of self. I don't believe that there is, the most important piece of ethics in this is, can I coach myself? If I can coach myself, then I am ethically allowed to coach somebody else. But if I haven't learned how to coach myself, I really shouldn't be putting myself out. But nobody tells us that. In the number of coaches I meet who are credentialed but don't have active work, it only goes to show that they're not prepared. Nobody really taught them how to go out and do this. So to coach others, learn to coach yourself. You must confront your own blind spots, sit with your own discomfort. I must confront my own blind spots, sit with my own discomfort, develop my capacity to deal with complexity. And like I said, it's not a weekend trick. This can't be sustained without rigorous inner work that happens over months, sometimes years. The market, however, is slowly maturing. And to everybody's point, we all see that there is a market for coaching and there is a need for coaching. Because what coaching does, training can't do. What coaching does, consulting can't do. What coaching does, therapy can't do. And thus, I would say that organizations that are hiring coaches should actually get smarter by asking for accreditation hours, supervised practice, ethical training, looking at true readiness, which comes from coaches who've done their own work. And understanding that while certification can build a capability, because it is a skill, right? But there's also a capacity, and that capacity is built by practice, which is why the ICF model is so robust that, on one hand you learn, on the other hand you practice. So the shift I see, and I think it's a necessary reckoning, is from how fast do I get certified to who am I really becoming as I learn to hold this work. And to recognize the sacredness of this process. Any work that we do to help another human being is a sacred process. And I don't want to get too woo-woo about it, but the fact of the matter is that if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to make a mess of it and hurt somebody. So I do believe that we have work to do. We have, our work is cut out for us. If this is a line of work that anyone here is in, if you're training coaches, I think we need to get our act together.
Yeah. I just have a few follow-up thoughts on it, and would love for you or other members to add. So one is, to be a coach, do you really need a certification? Number one. Yes or no? Let's do a quick round robin.
I would say yes. And the reason I would say yes is because I've been on the other side. Today I'm on the side where I actually am a coach educator. But for the time I was representing an organization, there is no way for me to find out what a standardized lens is when I'm hiring somebody. So if I say I'll hire PCC coaches, then I know what I should expect. But I'm sorry to say, there were many times I was disappointed because while the credentialing is there, the quality is not.
Right. I hear you. And two, the second part of my question was, oftentimes you said that there are a lot of coaches who have the certifications and the credentials, but don't have the work or the income or business, so to say, because they lack something. So I had a thought in my mind. So does this really show their capability as a coach? Or the other thought that came to me, I think with most coaches, the challenge is on the other skill set, which is how to market and create a business out of their skill that they already have.
It's a both and, Sheeba. I think both are true. I wouldn't say a lack. I think the lack would be that we haven't yet been trained by the right institution, and thus we've not learned how to coach. Like I said, there's a lot of emphasis on the what of coaching. I've seen people walk out with, fat texts out of coach certification programs and saying, what do I do with this? And yet at the same time, people do need to be educated on how to build their business, because this is a line of work and a career path. I would also say that I know very few coaches in the world who do only coaching. Most coaches are also training. Most coaches are either training and consulting or writing, but there is something else that supports the process. And this is I was on the ICF board for 4 years, and I can tell you with great clarity that this is a question that does the rounds very often. That is it a career path for all the 6,000 that we currently have, who can actually go out and become coaches and sustain a living by doing just this.
Yeah, great perspective, Preeti. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
I'll move on to a more diversity and inclusion perspective and bring in Sinjini here. Leaders today are carrying a lot of emotional burnout, and we spoke about it in our first chakra session also today. They have identity pressures and they have blind spots that Preeti also mentioned. So how is story coaching evolving to speak to these deeper human needs?
Right. Story coaching essentially is the act of understanding the narratives, the voice that speaks within us, and then essentially to also identify what are my principles, values, ethics, beliefs, behavior, what is the culture. So essentially, in some way, if that person wants to creatively express in their own thoughts, it's one thing. If I'm coaching somebody who is a company's senior leader, then often this also brings in the company's culture, value, team conversations, stakeholder conversation, marketing conversation, essentially communication and culture building. And while a lot of that is historically, that kind of a 5-monkey rule, etc. Internally, there is a lot, as you very beautifully brought in this word called identity. There's a lot that I want to be versus I am, and what I'm expected to be, or what somebody in my role should be. So there are a lot. Like if somebody is asked a very straightjacket question, they would perhaps put in jargons. Okay, fine. Our company believes in integrity and diversity and inclusion, customer first, etc. But once you go a little deeper, can you tell me one instance in your life? What about your first failure? What about a time when your team saved you, had your back? It is through these kind of conversations, and at times one-to-one, at times I do a whole lot of group sessions, and call it coaching, mentoring, or workshopping, masterclass. I do it in all varieties, and at times it also comes down to interpersonal relationships. It's not always about transforming one person unless it is a one-to-one session. It is also in leading with one beautiful story, like that time that I was in this crisis and this person stepped up, and that influences and inspires everybody. I believe that we all say politically correct things, especially at work, However, deeper inside, our identities and our blind spots are very much shaped by our lived experience, how we grew up. I mean, we all grew up in a very dated and rich, but at the same time, generational glimmers and trauma alike. And there are things we have absorbed in terms of the gender script, in terms of our privilege script, in terms of, what we should or should not do, what we have or do not have, what we should be, what kind of, especially I would say, I do have a lot of male clients, and the fathers they were, the fathers they had, the fathers they are, the fathers they want to be. There is a whole lot of, and also the fact that our leadership also is changing from being straitjacket, authoritative, disciplinarian to much more accessible, open door policy, first name basis, obviously, much longer back, decades back, but really the relationship is coming down to more casual, one-to-one, face-to-face, eye-to-eye level conversation, king to king. And these conversations require somebody to be very rooted in who they are. So identity, blind spots, scripts, narratives, availability, emotional capability. Each of these things essentially come down to, having to rediscover yourself, because no school taught us this, no college taught us this, and no early year career also taught us this. We were promoted and we were incentivized based on, performance. It was a zero-sum game. We were, like we did in school, hide each other's notes, hide our own notes from each other, etc. Early years of our career do that. As soon as you become a people manager, you become business manager, you have to handle stakeholders, you come to face yourself in the mirror in a big way. And that is exactly where how you speak, how emotional intelligence plays in, beyond your skills, how the heart plays in beyond your head. All of these things are mattering more and more. And as I also said, but I'm repeating myself, how I deal with people and what people respond to no longer is that the fear psychosis. So if I have to do better, I have to be better. So that is where my work comes in. To, I use that line, bringing hearts to work, because Dame Shafiq, who was the director of London School of Economics, she said this beautifully, that in the past work was about muscles, in the present about the brain, but in the future it is going to be about the heart. And I feel that that future is here. We are living in that future already.
Thank you, Sinjini. And I think identity and dichotomy has been a constant theme across multiple sessions, and people need to bring more awareness around it. I'll invite Vikram to share his view on two things, because we missed his perspective earlier. Can you demystify what really happens in a coaching conversation so that people really get a sense of what it is? And two, coaching is moving from performance to purpose. So, what systemic or cultural shifts made this possible in India, from your perspective?
I think a lot can be said and also has been said. So there are multiple definitions. I would urge, whether you follow the ICF school or the Harvard Business Review or the Center for Creative Leadership. So I think various definitions are there. So I would say coaching, certainly I've been schooled in the ICF methodology. I want to be loyal and remain in that line. So certainly a very thought-provoking partnership. And those are the two things that strike me, because it is about equality. It's about building belief, perspectives, and obviously the will to take action on the areas that you identified. But certainly the center point is the individual herself. I think so. Obviously, it's a very thought and a belief-provoking process, because if you don't build your belief, you will still be at the stage that you were. So very often, that is something that sets apart some great coaches from the average ones, because they've not touched the belief system, which is what great coaches do. And I think certainly the question about moving to purpose is really one which Maslow has written very heavily around. So once your basic needs of food, clothing, shelter are met, something similar happens to human beings. They say the two most important dates in your life are one date is when all of us are born. So the date that you are born is a very important day and date in everyone's lives. The second is when you discover why you were born. I think some people would live their entire lives trying to figure out their purpose. Then there'll be some other great people like Sachin Tendulkar, who at the age of 9 will say, "Hey, I know I want to play for the country." So I think there are various time frames, but it is very natural that when one's basic needs of how you define performance, is it financial, or is it about meeting your hunger goals or other needs, or so whatever be your goals, once the basic goals are met, we all human beings are purpose maximizers. We all read it in many, many different places in different words. So I really believe, I love this definition, that human beings are purpose maximizers. Once the basic needs are met, we all drift towards this larger purpose. But I think if you look at corporate India, the shifts are very, very acute. 25 years ago, we were very hierarchical. So you please one boss, learn to please her and him, and your life is made. But now, in a global corporation, which we all work in, you have multiple bosses, some sitting in New York, some sitting in India, stakeholders, board members. The higher you go, the stakeholders keep increasing. So I think that brings in a lot of complexity beyond just purpose. You have to now balance multiple stakeholders, and not everybody is comfortable. So you need coaching to balance the needs of stakeholders. You said hearts, we're bringing more hearts, and thanks to the next gen, I think mental health is become okay. It's okay to admit that you're not okay, and therefore there is an impact on wellness, on being able to understand what will it take for me to become mentally well. So I think from hierarchies opening up, you got to learn to balance multiple stakeholders. It's no longer, corporate India is no longer about the head. The heart has come in, mental wellness has come in. So all of that brings in newer dimensions for coaching. So I think there are multiple changes happening, which are bringing in this broadening of what really I would say is the scope for coaching. You can call it purpose, you can call it other complexities which are coming. It's a welcome change, and I think it's important because as coaches plug into this system, there is more, the SOW, the scope of work, as they say in consulting, has got broadened. And I welcome this complexity because the more complex problems there are in the world to solve, the more there is scope, the more different types of coaches can prosper. If you scan the number of types of coaches in the US, perhaps there are 25, 20 to 30 types of coaches. And we are seeing broadening of those dimensions of coaching because of all these complexities in life. So I welcome that complexity because that means more scope for all the 6,000, 7,000 budding coaches.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's a very deep and broad contextualization of the coaching space, Vikram. I'll expand the horizons now and we'll move and explore some new frontiers that are opening up in the coaching space. And I'll invite Dr. Manoj Biswas to share his perspective on how AI is changing human capability models. How will AI augment or reshape the coaching profession in India?
Thank you. I think it's a very interesting and a very popular statement, or an unpopular statement, which is doing rounds today, to say that, it's widely heard that AI is going to replace your job. And I think that's true for various sectors of, corporate life. I do not think that statement is true, but I do think that people who are knowledgeable about AI and who know how to work with AI will certainly replace and take your job. So that's where the future is. So let me demystify and peel this onion a little, because more and more I speak to people, this seems to be the buzzword, but yet not many are very familiar with, how this is going to impact our lives. AI will always run side by side in our profession. See, AI today, as we understand, are in basically three buckets. One piece of AI, which basically knows how to look at random, data and put it into structures and help you or enable you faster than you can do it yourself, right? So we had analytics where we had stack of data, and of course AI sits on it to do this faster and that's a no-brainer. That's been proven that they can do it fast, accurate, and that's an enabler. The second piece is around agentic AI. While people talk about agentic AI is nothing but a wraparound of AI tools that you have. So it will enable you to do your process flow that you are doing today in your process, to do it in a better managed way. Whether it is about setting up meetings, whether it is about processing XYZ things, that you have created a process which you're doing, humanly doing it. So you let the machine learning kick in and do that. So that is agentic AI. The third piece is generative AI, where I think we are still not there. I mean, we understand what it is, but we are still not there. Generative AI is where the artificial intelligence starts to learn about your process, looks at the data and start deducing things on its own. So I think we are very far from that aspect where AI or generative AI will basically overtake a human mind, and that's because of two basic reasons. The human mind processes a decision based on a lot of things. One is, of course, data. The second part is, as many of our co-panelists talked about, is about the heart. It's about the emotional part of it. So a simple example would be that, data will tell you that this is right, but the human angle comes to consider other factors and say, well, this is right, but in this, maybe not so relevant to implement. So I think that is where the coach and the AI mechanism needs to come together. Somebody who will enable you to process the data fast, come up with the right answer, because that is about your preparedness as a coach. However, the human element that is missing today in artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence today will only program based on data. So that human element is what the coach brings into the table. And that, I think, is inseparable. So in the future, at least in the very near future, I mean, we can't predict, future beyond a very short period of time. Now, in the near future, I think most of our profession will work with AI as an enabler.
Sure. Thank you. I think this was a very dynamic group with very diverse perspectives and insights. I would take a quick check on each one of yours perspective, a quick rapid round with each one of you. So with one quick word or sentence, give your perspective on the following. One coaching myth India must drop. Each one of you just quickly go around.
That coaching is remedial, something that you can prescribe when someone is failing rather than develop your population of people.
Okay. Vikram?
Well, that one coaching myth you said, right?
Yes.
Interesting. Everything has been spoken, so I'm a little speechless for once, which is rare for HR people. I'll wait for others to speak and maybe.
Okay.
Well, let me add. I think one of the myths that we need to drop is that I have a problem, I have a business problem, and I get a coach in and it will get solved. I think that's been the approach that I have seen with at least some of the clients that I have worked with. That now I've got the coach in, and now the magic wand gets waved, and it will get solved.
Yeah, I think the myth has come back. So I think I was thinking more from how do I talk about the myth that coaches have? I think the myth is that I can straight away start solving the problem
Yep.
without working on the belief system. So I am a big, believer in the coach working on the belief system first, then the problem itself.
I
Absolutely.
feel one thing that needs to shift is that coaching is for some people. I think they should make it an annual, it essentially is something that everybody at every level requires.
Thank you.
It is really to realign, what selections we made at 18 or 25. We need to realign that every once in 3 years or something at minimum. And if corporates enable that, that would be a great way to go.
Absolutely. Thank you for that wonderful curation of ideas and perspectives from multiple lenses. I see a lot of excitement in the chat, and there are some people who would like to take a few questions. We are nearing towards the end. Let's take up one question at least before we close. Karan, would you like to unmute yourself and go ahead, please?
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for the insightful discussion. I'll just give some context, share my experience, and ask a couple of questions. I've been a practicing coach for around the last 7 years. I've moved from business. I heard some of you say that there's a resistance in CEOs or head of companies to take on coaching, right? And how do you expect people, if they haven't experienced coaching, to become a sponsor? If that doesn't happen, the idea typically remains that it's remedial, that you come in and you kind of fix. I've been an internal coach also for a large consulting firm. There has been a huge demand in terms of ROI or outcomes. So that also comes from business. So those are some of the things that have happened. A lot of times I've also seen that coaching has been brought in when there is a need to fix somebody. It's not true, it's not ideal, but that is what happens in the real world. And again, to be wearing the coaching hat, it becomes so difficult because the person who needs to be fixed is at such a low point that probably he needs to come up the curve to even think for himself. So those are some of the things that I have been dealing with over the last few years. My question here is, what do you, all of you are very senior leaders in the HR fraternity, what do you think we can do to change this myth about coaching that you said, is remedial? One, how can we bring about that change? And is there any systemic shift you have noticed in terms of the kind of problems where coaching has been called to, deal with? Longish, but I thought I'll just put it out there.
Karan, I have tons of examples for you. I don't think that we have enough time to go over all of them, but to keep it really brief, I would say always look at organizational as well as individual objectives. Make sure that you have a measurement framework and define metrics for success and report them when the time is right. Ensure that there's governance and visibility in the process as you work with business or HR. And develop these cases as stories to tell.
Yeah, and I would say two things. See, when you're hungry for business, Karan, you accept any business. Start saying no where you see that the client is uncoachable or there is a performance issue. Because early on, I've also made that mistake of, because you want practice and you're getting free guinea pigs inside an organization, you take any. Slowly through maturity, you realize that accepting any client is not good, because then people get wrong perceptions or conceptions about coaching. So one is say no to either people who are uncoachable or situations where you're put in as a coach which are not coaching situations, because you have a clarity which you need to convey. So the second thing is material. I would say today in organizations, the written material travels farther than words. So please use the right material to spread your marketing message on what is coaching. Simple one-pagers, two-pagers, what it is not, who should be doing it. I've seen it travels far more than the spoken word inside at least large organizations. So those are my two bits.
Thank you, Vikram and Preeti. We are almost on
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you, Karan, for that question. Just before we close, I want to ask one final question to all panelists, and you can just raise your hand and say, do you all have a coach or had a coach in your life?
Absolutely, yes.
Awesome. So thank you, all the panelists. Today's discussion reminded us that coaching in India is not just progressing, it is evolving into a powerful combination of science, humanity, culture, and consciousness. The future of coaching in India won't be built by chance. It will be built by intention, depth, and community, as we have all discussed and discovered. Thank you. Let's continue building that future together. And over to you, Preeti.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sheeba. Thank you so much to our panelists. That was a really, really rich conversation, and we appreciate you sharing your experiences and perspectives so openly. As we come to the close of day one, I invite you to pause for a moment. Today wasn't about how much we covered. It was about what touched us, what shifted, and what we are beginning to notice differently. If you're feeling reflective, a little tired, or quietly energized, that's exactly how this day was supposed to be. Tomorrow, we continue this journey upward into personal power, compassion, voice, intuition, and wisdom. We'll build on today's grounding and turn it into clarity, courage, and conscious action. Thank you for the quality of presence you brought into this space today. Please rest well, stay gentle with yourself, and come back tomorrow with the same openness. We look forward to welcoming you for day 2 of Spirituality to Reality. Have a peaceful evening and see you tomorrow at 9:50 a.m. IST so that we can all enjoy some silent time before we start at 10. Thank you so much and good day to everyone.